Так, уважаемые дамы и господа, коллеги, приветствуем вас на площадке Международного мультимедийного пресс-центра России сегодня. И мы начинаем с вами работу по программе Международной научно-практической конференции «Международный опыт технического регулирования и стандартизации в области сохранения культурного наследия». Вопрос, у нас достаточно плотный график работы, просьба придерживаться, спикеров регламента. Регламент где-то на выступление где-то полчаса, не больше, 20-30 минут.
20 or 30 minutes, please. The request to the speakers to speak not more than 20 or 30 minutes. So the issue of standardization of the technical regulation is very topical. In our country, this is quite a new issue, although we understand that the history of restoration has gone through the post-war cycle of formation, but it is based on the basis of exchange of information between people. In those years, it was a tragedy if some great big specialist has left this panel of work. But some period of thinking has passed, and only in 2007 the Technical Council for the Technical Regulation was set up at the Ministry of Culture, which undertook the function of collection of information. Then there was the Code of Rules. That is, it was the accumulation of experience and standardization of it. And from 2013, the Technical Committee, the Cultural Heritage, is working, which is set up under the raw standard agency. This is the agency for metrology and normative regulation. Technical regulation, sorry, and during this time, we know that 19 standards have been issued, the national standards, and the documents were prepared, which can legalize so-called the change in the classificator, and I hope that by the end of the year this classificator will be put in force. And then we have prepared also the documents which define our policy, but they're at the stage of discussion and rethinking. And this is the regulation on the cultural heritage. So this is a whole block of documents. They will increase, but not, so far we're working with 10 new standards, also related to the objects of cultural heritage. And this conference is dedicated to the exchange of experience, the expansion of borders, not only within the Russian school, our understanding of the sphere, but it also is an attempt to harmonize it with the international experience and to learn from our colleagues how it is done in other countries, how this delicate sphere is regulated, when we understand that the restoration and conservation is a humanitarian sphere, but it uses the technical tools, and it's important that the technical tools will be correct, adequate, and so that there will be the common language at the international level and a common understanding of the principles and methods of work, like a framework on the basis of which any school can develop further. So that's in short my presentation. Now I want to give the floor of a word of greetings to Tsvetnov, the Director of the Department of the Preservation of Cultural Heritage at the Ministry of Culture. Thank you, Sergei Borisovich. On behalf of the Ministry of Culture, I'd like to greet all those present, my colleagues, our foreign guests. So I'd like to greet our foreign guests, our foreign colleagues who found time to come and discuss the issues the issues of standardization And the international experience, which will be discussing today, will be our key point of discussion. And we are not quite at the beginning of the road. No, we have made some progress in the area of standardization in Russia. We have a concept of the development of the national system of standardization of the Russian Federation up to 2020, which was approved by the government of RF. And from 2013, we have approved several standards. And in our area, a lot of work of the technical committee is being done for making amendments and additions to the classificator and the All-Russia classificator of the types of economic activity. Once again, I'd like to tell you that it's not the point that we're lagging behind somebody or we're doing something wrongly. No, we're on the right road. But coming back to the international experience, I urge you today to discuss the following issues. Over the last 2 or 3 years, in our area, we have made quite a progress in terms of harmonization with the international experts and their organizations. In 2014, Russia has reacquired the international accreditation status, and now we are organizing together with the Crown specialists the courses for the course of the wooden buildings in Kizhi. And then by the efforts of several people, Russia received back the ECOMOS accreditation. Now it is a member of ECOMOS, and I think that Mrs. Almazova will say a few words about it, what ECOMOS means for the Russian Federation. And I urge you to follow the same way. That is discussing the international cooperation in the area of standardization. Not we are lagging behind. No, we are not lagging behind. But the international experience is always something new, something. It's always a chance to go beyond our borders. There are many organizations, associations in the world on these issues. WTA in Czechia and Germany, and the Italians on the issues of standardization. And Sergei Borisovich, I'd like you to discuss the issues like the cooperation in the area of standardization with international organizations. And you will decide with which particular organizations you will cooperate. Once again, I want to greet you at this conference, and I wish you good luck and every success in your work. You have a very tense, very hectic program, and it is good because you will discuss all the issues concerned, and you will listen to the opinions of your colleagues. And I think that this conference is the beginning of the large work. Probably we will organize a biennale conference because we must work out the rules of the games in our area of standardization. Once again, I thank our international colleagues. Thank you for coming and good luck. Thank you. Now I'd like, do we have Mr. Volkov in the audience? Mr. Volkov? No. Then using this pause, I'd like to ask Mrs. Almazova on behalf of the ECOMOS National Committee to say a word of greeting and in order to gain their support of our work. Dear members of Presidium, dear colleagues, allow me to greet you at this important and very necessary forum for the area of the conservation of heritage. As Vladimir Anatolievich has announced, I dwell upon several points of ECOMOS. I hope that all those present know that the ECOMOS was set up in 1965 thanks to the initiative of the countries winners of the Second World War and the background of the colossal ruins over Europe and the Soviet Union during the Second World War. And so this one of the basics, one of the most important role of the organization belonged to USSR. The first president of International ECOMOS became our compatriot Ivanov, who was at the time the head of AUIPIK in USSR. As the Second World War has destroyed a lot of values in practically all countries of Europe, this organization mission was to create new approaches and methods and to unite the leading experts of the world in different disciplines to preserve the heritage for future generations. And I cannot but stress the following point. This is also the tribute of respect to the losses of the Soviet Union, of our people, in terms of culture and humanity. And this was the only organization in the world where the Russian language was the official language, along with the English, Spanish, and French. But unfortunately, there was a very sad event, and the last years, the Russian ECOMOS didn't work practically. So in 2014, the National Committee lost its accreditation and was liquidated. And for 2 years, the volunteer groups was creating the new National Committee of ECOMOS Russia. This was in 2015. This structure was registered in the Ministry of Justice for the first time of the history of this National Committee. And in 2016 in Istanbul, at the annual General Assembly of ECOMOS, the National Committee has acquired the official accreditation, after which the agreement on cooperation was signed. And from the 1st of January 2017, the National Committee of ECOMOS Russia started working. And today there is a process of creation of the scientific committees. As you know, the basic activity of ECOMOS, which has the status of the expert organization #1 according to UNESCO classification, is the fulfillment of expert examinations, classification, exchange of the advanced experience. There are 27 scientific committees who are included in the international ECOMOS. The participants of international committees are 110 countries of the world, 9.5 thousand people on and all. The National Committee ECOMOS Russia today unites in its ranks 276 members. So now on the 20th of September, the registration of applications of experts who want to become the members of National Committee of ECOMOS will be over. So if you want to join us, please send your send your applications, and there is a chance to become a member of this organization. Now I'd like to come back to the topic of this conference. I'll say again, the whole work, but for the nominations from the country's members to promote your objects for the status of the World Heritage of UNESCO. The main task of the National Committee is the expert examinations and the assessment of the World Heritage and the qualification, which are included in the nomination list. And so at the corner of this work is the creation of their adequate plans of management. First of all, this is the function of the owner of these monuments. And the function of COMOS is the provision of the methodological help and advice and expertise in the assessment of these documents. Of course, it is impossible without the serious and responsible, I want to stress it, responsible and professional normative base, normative framework in this sphere. And here the big help and work will be done by the scientific committees of the National Committee of COMOS, which are being set up today. And today there are 3 scientific committees. The first committee is the management of the archaeological heritage, then the committee for the industrial heritage, and the engineering art, and the committee for the theory and practice of the engineering diagnostics and the methods connected with the preparation of the initial date for the restoration of the historical objects. And the main thing is the monitoring, the current monitoring of the status of the monuments which have the status of World Heritage or are included in the nomination list. Within the framework of the Federal Council, we managed to include 3 standards, which will be elaborated together with the technical committee, that is the scientific committee of the National COMOS and the technical council. The working group will be set up, which will work with the normative documents. This is an open site, an open floor for the exchange of opinions and open dialogue. And all those who want to participate in it can write to the official website of their National Committee of COMOS and take part. And in conclusion, I cannot but say that in the Charter responsibilities of the national COMOS committees, one of the main directions is the harmonization of the international norms of the preservation of the World Heritage objects with the national standards. And this is the main task which is faced by all of us. And in conclusion, I'd like to thank for the floor, and sorry that I took too much time of your attention. We are open for the cooperation, and we are ready to see the specialists in our ranks. Thank you.
Well, distinguished colleagues, as you see, the words of welcome were a little bit longish, and now we are going to get down to the basic part of our work. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Paul Merce, the architect, full professor of the Department for Restoration, Modification, Reconstruction and Transformation of the Department for Architecture, Urban Development and Civil Engineering of the Delft Technical University, who is going to speak about the technical standards and technical regulation of Holland in the field of renovation, reconstruction, and preservation of objects having historical and cultural heritage value. So do please mind the
Ministry of Culture, but also the Dutch Embassy for inviting me to Moscow. I would like to give some impressions of our work in the Netherlands, but I try to be very brief and give you a general overview. Apart from the work for the university, I work in a research agency and a consultancy trying to bring together the interests of monument preservation and monument development in the Netherlands, and we have two offices spread in the country. I thought it was interesting to use this opportunity to show you a little bit of our heritage before getting into the regulations, because we first must know what we have to regulate for. In the Netherlands, the concept of heritage maybe is slightly different from other places in the world. For us, heritage is very much about the quality and the history of our everyday life. Is it okay with the translation? Important heritage for us is all the architecture produced in the 19th century and the 20th century. And that is about large numbers of buildings, but also about industrial buildings with industrialized products, but also with ideologies of the post-war time in particular that today can be questioned. So if we talk about regulation and what to do with these monuments, it's much more than the technical aspect of conservation, but it's about the reinterpretation of entire parts of our cities. A second thing is, although Holland is a very small country, we like very much to make big heritage. So we have listed entire landscapes, entire municipalities. And on the picture you see 2 World Heritage Sites in the Netherlands. One is exactly as big as an entire municipality. And the other one covers 4 provinces and is about 80 kilometers long, which is a defense line. And the other one is a polder system. So in these heritage landscapes, the question is very much about daily life in relation to urban development, all the spatial challenges you find. And then this technical merit is only one aspect of the challenge we have to preserve it, to find a way to preserve this heritage. A third notion is about how we see monuments in our society. And there are many different views, and that makes why monuments are so interesting, I think. And in Holland, and especially in the state policy, we do not see heritage as museum pieces which are outside the life of every day, but are as much integrated into modern life. This means that we think it's very important that ordinary people can experience the quality of the monuments, that they can use these monuments. We also need that to finance the preservation. But it also means that we must accept that a certain intervention is possible. So we really, our monument preservation is very much about defining rules for modernization with respect for the heritage, but also not afraid that interventions can add a new quality to the monuments. Maybe this picture reflects a bit how we look at our heritage. For us, heritage is not, as on the left of the picture, that we want to relive the past and dress up like the paintings of Rembrandt of the 17th century and make a kind of simulation of the past. It's more like the girl on the right, who is a modern, contemporary, connected girl, living today, but looking with a curiosity to see what their ancestors have produced and how that can enrich her life. So that is very much, for us, the meaning of heritage. And if you look carefully on the left, you can see it's all modern materials, which is all the thing. So it's a very fake slide. And with heritage, there's a very big urgency to think about use. We have lots of monuments which are empty, farms that are losing their function, churches that are losing their function because we do not have the discipline to go to church anymore, monasteries, old schools, all sets of typologies are losing their function. And we can easily declare them heritage, but if we do not give them a new proper life, you can question what is the relevance of the listing. In brief, you can say Holland is entirely listed. The whole country is heritage. We are full of monuments, listed areas, interesting areas, and this heritage varies from the traditional big monuments like the churches to landscapes, cities, and modern architecture. There are 2 ways in which we are listing. Now I get into the legal construction. First is listing as listed monuments. It's the way we all know is that you make a Heritage Act, a special law, and that makes it possible to list monuments. But the second thing, and that is where the emphasis is today, and I think that is where Holland differs a little bit from the introduction I just heard about Russia, where you try to harmonize very much the thing. We try to harmonize very much the heritage policy into the ordinary planning. and not so much as a world apart. We want to integrate that. So the second line of heritage policy is part of the Spatial Planning Act. In the general, ordinary, everyday spatial planning, heritage is becoming more and more important. And we can say we are stopping to list new monuments. Well, you can see we had quite a lot. And heritage qualities in the future will be listed through urban planning. About the listing, we have 62,000 national monuments. Yesterday I heard that in the Russian Federation you must have 30,000. Well, Holland is slightly smaller than Russia, so imagine how many monuments we have. And next to that we have almost 60,000 municipal monuments. We have conservation areas. We have 10 World Heritage Sites. We hope to extend it with one next year. So it's about dealing with large numbers and a big variety. Well, this is a long slide, which I hope you can read afterwards. The listing of the monuments is a job for the national government. But then when it comes to preservation and to intervention in monuments, the municipalities, they are the key stakeholders because they have to give the construction permit. And that is a general permit in which all the things are evaluated, including the heritage value. And the role of the National Heritage Agency is only as a consultant. They do not have the power to say anything. So it's really decentralized. That means that we do not have directive regulations, but we make an evaluation of building projects. So the skill is not so much in the regulation, but the skill is in the people who are examining the proposals. In general, you can say there are there's a kind of process which is always undertaken. And the essential question is that for each monument we try to find what makes the essence of the heritage, what is the quality, what is the essential quality, and then we judge if the proposal respects those qualities. And generally, there's a process that documents have to be provided by the owner of the monument or by the person who is doing the project, including detailed surveys. And we have lots of regulations, but they do not have the status of a law. It's more a database. And in the end, it's the examination of the proposal reflected to the quality of the heritage that decides a decision. And then briefly about the second line of preservation through spatial planning. Wherever we make a spatial plan in Holland, the municipalities, they have to make an inventory of heritage qualities. And in the plan, they have to justify how those qualities are incorporated in the plan. That doesn't mean that everything is protected, but you have to say why certain things are protected or are thrown out of that. In this way, we can very well regulate the urban morphology of our cities, in the building height, in the structure of our things, in the landscape quality, all the things that go beyond the listed monuments. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this conference, so I won't get more in detail on that. So to go back to the listed monuments and the legal procedure and the guidelines involved, you can say there are 4 different areas in which a permit has to be evaluated. First, it is general regulations on construction. That is about construction safety, about fire, about environmental laws, all the things which are applied for all new construction, but also for monuments. The second is the urban regulation, is the question whether it respects the use, the morphology, the roofscapes, the orientation, all those things which are defined in an urban plan. The third are the architectural regulations. We have a very strong tradition in Holland that new buildings are evaluated on the quality of their design by architects, but also on the way they are contextualized. In the past, people were always claiming that this was a kind of class justice and that architects were helping their friends and kicking out the others, or it was about taste in architecture. Today, there's a very strong terms of reference in which the key qualities of areas are described, and then the question is whether new buildings fit into that context or not. And at last, there's the heritage regulations, and then the big question is, are the cultural values respected? If you see what is the practice, is that the first things, the general regulations and the urban regulations, are strict norms, but there are always possibilities for exceptions. And in particular, in the case of monuments, it's very difficult to follow the law, for instance, on the fire regulation. And there's also always an opportunity to get an exception. as long as the fire department approves the solution adopted. For instance, the compartmentation is a big thing in fire, that there should be units with a certain size which are fire safe. But in a monument, you cannot change the dimension of a space. So then normally you can get an exception as long as you have the idea that there is a solid solution and people have the opportunity to fly out of the building when there is a fire. Same counts for the urban regulations. And then the last one, the architectural and the heritage regulation, it's very much based on a personal evaluation of experts. So really believe that the skills are in the expert persons, both in the municipality and in the architectural committees. You can say there's a general thing in which material authenticity, which I think is a big thing for the regulation, has to be respected. And in general, in all the evaluations, people will look if the materials are first of all, kept in situ. Secondly, if they're being replaced, with original materials and so on. But judging heritage, there's the same concern about the use. Can we improve the comfort and the sustainability? Can we make houses livable? Can we make isolation, for instance? And that means you change the technical detailing, you change the way the windows look, but at the same time you can do that with respect to the heritage value. We also look very much at how people experience the heritage. So it's not only an archaeological conservation, but it's also about the quality of the site as a whole, where the old and the new things together create a historic experience. And we believe very much that for specific cases, you must find specific arguments. So we like to discuss very much rather than to regulate. That means that the discussion about what the heritage value is very important. This is the key of my work, so I try to be extremely brief with respect to the timekeeping. But we have a whole systematic to determine of any building the heritage value and use that as a terms of reference for intervention. The cultural historic assessment is essential. It's a document you produce for each and every building or site, in which you study the building, you study the history, you study the space and the technology, and from there on you come to a statement where you say what is essential of the quality. Part of that can be color research, part can be building archaeological research, and then you get much into the Bauforschung area. And normally municipalities require these documents in order to give a permit, but the argument is always, it's always open for argument. And in this cultural value assessment, we try to look beyond just the material value, but also think what is the conceptual value, what is the meaning, the value for a community, for the expert, the value of the object, and the value for the larger context. So we try to really broaden the scope and also look at immaterial values of monuments. In general, you can say our recommendations follow different lines. First of all, it's about the material conservation, where in different colors you can indicate where you have the high monumental values and the authentic substance, and where you have the later additions which contribute to the structure or which could better be removed. All of them have different colors. But secondly, we study very much the logic of the place, the morphology, which means where you can substitute certain parts with respect for the structure. And more we try to find words for the immaterial quality, the symbolic meaning of the monuments, the traditions which they represent. And we try to relate this as much as possible to the spatial construction, because you need the space, you need the monument in order to have the associated value. So we try to get a hold on that. That is a subject I would love to explain in a different setting. This slide shows that we do have execution guidelines in the Netherlands, but they are not obliged for all monuments. They are mainly obliged for monuments where the government is giving certain subsidies. And then, giving the subsidy, the government can ask for guidelines, which I think are getting closer to what the colleagues will present afterwards. There's a long list of guidelines which exist about the application of wood, about mortar, about timber, about all these different, about reed, all these traditional materials. And each of these volumes is something like 60 pages. They all have their same organization. There's a long list of definitions, so all the interventions are defined. What do we mean by repair? What do we mean by replacing, etc. It has a process description about the organization of the site, the qualifications of the workers involved, what is meant by repair. We try to avoid and learn from the mistakes in the past and be very clear about the do's and the don'ts. What about renewal, about modernization or modification? We try to make specifications of materials. And very important, what are the skills needed for workers to work on those? They are very interesting documents, extremely helpful. There's some illustrations about the mortars and the reed roofs in this picture, but they do not have a legal status in order to apply for all buildings. And there's a big discussion whether or not we should have this directive approach or the evaluation. And I think those are the lines in which you can think. To come to a conclusion, just some more examples of what we're doing. In a way, we respect very much the international developed, we have the knowledge, we have the experts, and they're very much involved. But we also try to innovate and look about how we can make our monuments sustainable and how they can compete in this market with new buildings, also in times of quality, energy consumption, etc. But always with respect for the monument and also with durability, because many innovations prove in the end to be negative. That it seems the perfect solution, and you wait. Well, the color research, which you also might know, the interior things, all this knowledge is available, but we try to apply it only in the cases that the type of monument requires that type of intervention. For instance, color research is extremely common practice, even for social housing complexes that have become monuments. It's a kind of standard practice that you do a color research and you base your new proposals upon the outcomes of the research. As a conclusion, some words about all the things I've said before, and some examples to see what we do to our monuments. And colleagues sometimes are very critical and they say the Dutch are crazy, they mess up with their monuments. Others, in particular architects, say, well, this is very interesting because in Holland there is an opportunity to give monuments a new life, and we're not afraid to show that. So I choose some of the more radical examples, creating holes in monuments, building buildings over them, making bookstores in churches. But in all these things, there has been a big discussion about, but what is the essential contribution of this heritage to the quality of our cities, and does the intervention respect that? So I want to finish with that, and thank you very much for listening.
Большое спасибо, профессор Мёрс.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Mers. Well, I would like to make a remark. On principle, the problems which you have outlined after collecting some experience practices are being transferred to the sphere when there is a necessity to regulate the relations in our sphere. Well, when it is a matter of fire safety, technical safety, environmental approach, or inclusion into the landscape of the territory, well, these developments are rather positive nowadays because territorial planning, for example, has become an obligatory factor. And the aim is to preserve the cultural heritage, including the natural environment, landscapes, etc. As my colleague has said, we are going parallel ways, and that is why the exchange of experience and our acquaintance are very important. I think later on we shall discuss the way we are going to cooperate further, and maybe we might create an international group which will work in the framework of ICOMOS. It was of great interest. You were rather brief and rather tough, but very, very interesting. Thanks a lot. Well, colleagues, our colleagues are working in a very precise manner, and that is why I think there will be time for communication. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Gerald Gerecht, Professor, Doctor of Technical Sciences, Head of the Institute for Testing Construction Materials of Stuttgart Civil Work.
Yeah, many thanks that I have the opportunity to give here a lecture on the topic of goals, tasks, mission structures, and standards of WTA. Before I start, I want to thank, first of all, the Deputy Minister of Culture of Russian Federation, because I have had a meeting on Denkmal Fair. It was a very nice meeting, and we have also a meeting half a year later in my office. And I think there are a lot of common perspectives, things we can do in the future. More thanks also to you, Mr. Kulikov and Mr. Tvetov, but many thanks also to you, Paul Meurs, as well as to the representative of ICOMOS. I haven't understood the name, but many thanks for your introduction, because first I have to say that WTA is working in the field after ICOMOS. I'm also a member of ICOMOS, and ICOMOS has a more strategical work to decide what's the cultural aspect, what's the cultural value of a site, of a natural site, or something similar things. WTA is working then in the field of technical aspects, because technical aspects, we have existing buildings, not only cultural heritage buildings, we have also buildings of the 19th century and so on, which has a lot of problems. And to understand the behavior of the structures, to understand the materials behavior, is very important to find out or to work out strategies how to repair these constructions. And there is the need of the experience, not only of research people like the colleagues and the assistants in the universities and research departments of different institutions. There's also the need of the practitioners, of the planners, of the conservative people, and so on. And last not least, also of the companies which will develop new products which will help. We have to find out whether they will work or not. Even that's the most interest of serious companies. They have also the interest that they bring workable and suitable materials for cultural heritage buildings. But then, if you will find out this, you have the need to work close together. And WTA now is the main idea and the mission of WTA to make this. First, WTA started in Germany. May I have the... Thank you, the presenter. First of all, I have to say what's the name of WTA, because it's a German name. It's Wissenschaftlich-Technische Arbeitsgemeinschaft für Bauinstandsetzen und Denkmalpflege. I think you don't understand this. Therefore, I have here the English version. And the English version is International Association for Science and Technology of Building Maintenance and Monument Preservation. And as you can see on this title, we not only are looking on cultural heritage buildings, also we are looking on value, existing buildings, industrial, as also for habitat, Wohngebäude. For habits and so on. We are looking for all structures of the past. And why was WTA founded? The reason was very easy. After the Second World War, as the colleague from ICOMOS has pointed out, after the Second World War, a lot of buildings in Germany, a lot of historic buildings and cultural heritage buildings was destroyed. And there was the task to rebuild them or to build up new. The economics in Germany goes up. And so the city majors, they decided to make up all new buildings. So in this time, from the 16th to the 17th, in most cities, the existing structures goes down because it was easier to build up something new, and the economics allows to rebuild and to build up new buildings. But then we have also had a lot of buildings which has to refurbish, which has to be used, reused. And there, in this time, a lot of crazy work was done because there was no knowledge how to handle these old structures. We have framed timber houses, we have concrete, we have stone houses, natural stone houses, a lot of different materials which were used in the times earlier. And so there was a small number of seminars dealing with the questions which exists in the field of refurbishment of old existing buildings. And some scientists visited these sessions or seminars, and they said, it's crazy. The content which was given by the presenters, it's not true. There's no scientific basic on all what was said. And one seminar was to the problems of moisture protection, and a lot of crazy things were said. And that was the starting point that some professors from universities, but also practitioners, found together to establish a circle where they want to have a discussion how to do refurbishment work in the future, how to preserve existing structures, how to find the right way, the right strategy to repair old structures. And therefore, in this circle, the overall motivation was, as it pointed out here on the slide, to avoid that such crazy knowledge which was disseminated in general, which was not the right, this could be avoided. And on the other side, to encourage research in this field, and to also to allow the practical to train and educate practitioners in the right way, so that also existing buildings will have the chance to survey and to have a future. I will not go in details, but if you are interested, you can. I think this material, these slides, will be open for the audience. I will give some aspects to the way how WTA was established. I have given the reasons. There was a lack of knowledge. On the other side, there was a lot of people which weren't interested that knowledge will be existing to how to do this, because they have had a lot of success earning money with new structures. So in this time, the construction industry wasn't interested that a refurbishment, a rebuild of existing buildings will be done in the sense we think on WTA or on e-commerce. That was the reason why after this seminar I have spoken on that some people found together, but even in the first meeting there was half the people which attend this meeting, they tried to avoid, to hinder that a new foundation or a new association will be founded, which will consider the aspects of refurbishment of buildings, building maintenance, as well as preservation of historic buildings. So, but then this WTA was founded, and the interest of this WTA is that there should be an encouragement of research and its practical application. So it was the idea to bring together research people working in the research field, as well as people which are coming from the planning field, architects, engineers, as well as conservators and people from the cultural heritage authorities, as well as the people which are working in the field of production and of the construction industry, because also the people there working there, they should know the principle, the basics of how to deal with such structures, with such buildings. If not, all the people in this chain will have the same idea, the same mission, then it will not work. And therefore the idea of WTA is to bring together these people and to share the knowledge, to educate the different people in the different parts, and so try to find a way to develop new standards. And that's the point, because in standards normally we only address aspects of new buildings. In a rare way, in DIN or CEN standards, there will be addressed things which are containing the building maintenance. The cultural heritage, I will give you later on some ideas of CEN 346. Cultural heritage, there will be developed at the moment some standards, but for the practice, I think there are other needs, and therefore WTA has organized some technical committees in which took the main points to work out standards to address in these different fields. What's about the types of members? We have in our association, which was found in Germany, mostly German members. Now we have a name international, but we have 2/3 German members and 1/3 foreign members. But our idea and our goal is that we will have in the future a total different relation, because we are sure that it makes only sense to bring this in an European or an international context. We cannot only think on a national context. Therefore, our main interest is that we have a lot of individual members. We have at the moment about 450 members all around Europe. Sometimes we have some Chinese and American members too. Then we have some institutional members, that's institutions, universities, some research centers. We have promoting members, that's people from companies which are dealing in this field. And we have also honorary members, as mostly that are the founding members of our association. If you are looking on the professions which are working in the field of in the association of WTA, you see that we have at about 20 to 25% scientists. We have the biggest group, 50% architects and engineers, but we have also 30% restorers, practitioners, and consultants as well. So when we started, we was most focused on the problems we have had in Germany. But in beginning of the 1990s, there was also the interest of Netherlands research peoples, as well as companies in Netherlands, as well as in Switzerland, to come into WTA, because all individual members, all interested people, also people which are not members of WTA, can work in working groups which were positioned in the different technical committees we have, I will show later on. And they work out recommendations or state-of-the-art report of different aspects of restoration, of building maintenance, and so on. And then in 1998, the first group, 1985, the first group of Switzerland was founded, and they was allowed to build up an own national group in 1998. And the same was in Netherlands-Flandern, where we have also since 1998 the first national group, Netherlands-Flandern, which was then by the president of this national group, Jonas van Gemert. After we have had two national groups, then the Germans said, oh, we also need national groups, because the idea behind is we can build up recommendations in Germany, because most people working in these working groups are Germans was Germans in the past. But then we only address aspects which were very important for Germany. You cannot transfer this in an easy way in another country. You have to respect the national, the regional specification on the materials, on the constructions, on the weather and the climate conditions, and so on and so on. And therefore, the idea was that in these national groups, these recommendation can be adapted on the need which is given in this region or in this nation. And on the other side, to distribute, to disseminate also the knowledge, the ideas, the mission, the goals of the WTA. That's not goals for Germany, that's goals for all structures and buildings. And we was very happy that also in Czech Republic they have some initiatives to build up a group which should associate to WTA, and also in Austria. And we are in discussion with some people in Italy, also in Croatia, Hungary, and so on, which are interested to start such groups in respect to share and to participate on the knowledge which was built up the last 40 years we have had in WTA. Here on this slide, the different technical commissions were shown. So in the beginning, there was a lot of problems in timber structures, and surface technologies and the protection of timber structures, as well as on how to repair natural stones and such things. Moreover, we have had a lot of problems with moisture protection, masonry structures. Up to now, I think also in Moscow or in Russia, it's one of the biggest challenge to find the right strategy how to refurbish such buildings from technical point, but also from the architecture and the cultural heritage aspect. Because each strategy is an input, is a change of the existing structure. And as colleague Mörs has shown, that's very important for the cultural heritage aspects. And therefore, these groups, as well as a group which was related to concrete, because we have also concrete buildings up in the end of the 19th century, a lot of historical concrete structures, concrete buildings. Well, and then the basics, the physical and the chemical basics, they was also very important, especially if you think on moisture protection, on electro-osmotic effects and so on. If you don't know the basics behind, you cannot argument. Or if you have a cathodic protection of reinforced concrete structures, you have to know what is behind. And in this time, in 1980, there was a very low knowledge in this way. And therefore, WTA was also for scientific people in Germany a very good association, because there come together all the experts which have experience, knowledge in these fields, and therefore, in this time, WTA is a relatively strong way to concentrate all people interested in these fields. And then also another very important technical committee, the framework technical committee, worked out a lot of recommendations and state-of-the-art reports to these fields. In this slide, I will not go in detail. You can see more specificated what is done in the different technical commissions. For example, now in Technical Commission 1, which is now called Wood Preservation and Protection of Timber Structures, we have a lot of things in the field of protection of timber in the building industry, biotic and biotic damaging, weathering, fire protection, as you addressed, how to deal with this, also how to deal with old materials which was put in the beginning of the 20th century on this building, because we have a lot of problems how to bring them away, because we know they're not very good, or for the structure, also for the health of the people living in the buildings, how we deal with this. All these aspects will be discussed in this technical committee. Moreover, the technical committee, surface technology, describes the characteristic of the different mortars, plasters. What's the typical situation? What is the influence of the pore structure? Because in any way, if we use a specialized plaster for refurbishment or for the rehabilitation or for the restoration of buildings, we have a goal. We want to hinder moisture, or we want to conserve the structure, or we want to only to conserve the old surface. And then we bring on different types. We have the opportunity to take different materials. And there, in this technical committee, they will address when you will use what type of material, which kind of material, and what you have to look for if you will do this. And the recommendation which will be developed in the technical commissions, which has then working groups, and the main work is done in working groups where specialists, interested people, like in ECOMOS, can bring in their knowledge, their experience, and they have not to be members of WTA if then they don't want. For us, the main important thing is, like here, the issue of this conference, to bring together all the knowledge, all the people which are interested in such field, and to promote strategies how to deal in the future. I will not go in detail because it's a time-consuming thing to speak on all these different technical committees. If you are interested, I think you get these information, these slides by the organizers, and moreover, I'm here today, so I can give you more information if you are interested. but I think you should know what is done in the WTA. Now, WTA was founded 40 years ago. The topics which are of main interest, they changed. We have energy efficiency, as you have shown. We have comfort criteria in old buildings. We have problems of resources. We have problems how to deal with recycling of products which we adapt to structures, how we deal with them. And all these aspects wasn't addressed 40 years ago. So now we are changing WTA, also the structure of the technical committee. So we have these old technical committees because there are a lot of ongoing processes, a lot of working groups, more than 50 working groups are actually preparing new standards, new recommendations, new state-of-the-art reports or other new publications. But we have also new fields, and therefore, if there are groups anywhere in any national group of WTA, they have idea, for example, infrastructure, structures, buildings, and so on, tunnels, and so on. We have a lot of problems with reinforced concrete structures, pre-stressed concrete structures, and if there are some interest to work out recommendation for existing buildings, existing infrastructure, to make them durable and so on, and to refurbish them, then they can do it in new technical committees. And so we have a new technical committee in steel structures and structural glazing. We have also a new technical committee in preventive conservation, where a lot of conservators as well as cultural heritage building authority people are working in. And we have also a new technical committee in the field of fire safety, especially to the topics you have addressed before, because it's very difficult to deal with fire protection in existing structures and historic buildings. The outcome, the output of all these activities in the technical committees and in the working groups which are working in the different technical committees are WTA recommendations or state-of-the-art reports, which can be which will be published and which will be given to the market, to the interest people. At the moment, we have produced more than 68 recommendations. We have had in total about 120. In 40 years, the knowledge is going on, and therefore we have taken out old standards if they are not actual. And so at the moment, we have a lot of activities in working groups which prepare, have the basic of these old and produce a new recommendation, which is not on the market, but it will come in the next 1-2 years when they will finish their work. So, but in Germany, and I think also in other countries, Rostja Trochitka, my colleague and leader and president of the WTA Czech Republic, he will give you some ideas, I think, later on. These recommendations are used as state-of-the-art reports, and also they will be used in international standard at the moment. So here is also a summary. I will not go in detail, but here the actual on the market, the actual recommendations which will be suitable are listed. So I only go over of all this. That's 60. These are the 70 technical recommendations which we have at the moment in 8 technical committees. And as I've said, we have now 3 new technical committees, and these works will be all, and there are also a huge number of new recommendations will be worked out, as well as technical state-of-the-art reports. So we have a lot of other technical publications. We have journals in German language. We have had a journal in English language. We established a new one in English language. We have also the activities of the Czech colleagues. I think Rostja will give you some more info later on. And we have we have a lot of conferences, and also the conference reports and so on will be given by this. But a very important thing is, A very important thing is that we have also the interest. It was a demand on of the people working in the field, of the authorities, as well as of planners, architects, conservators, also for the production industry, to use the knowledge and to work out how products can be certificated that they have at minimum a standard qualification, because you can buy a lot of different materials under the same name. But the quality and the workability and the result after application is totally different. And therefore, if we are working in cultural heritage buildings or value existing buildings, it's very important to use the right material, because we can do this only once. And if we have the wrong material, we have a drastic reduction of the authenticity of the original building. And therefore, to main aspects like restoration plaster systems, as well as anti-graffiti systems, and also for chemical injection systems of masonry against rising damp, we have some standards to these points. And according to these standards, there's also a certification system. And all companies which are interested to have a minimum quality of their product bring their products and ask for the certification. The certification work will be done by official institution of material testing institutions and so on, not by WTA. They have to go to official material testing institutions and so on. They do the tests, and in WTA we have a certification group, specialists, which prove the results of all tests. And after fulfilling all the requirements, then you get the approval and you get the certification. And then also all materials which are listed under WTA, there's also a Mercedes and I will not say the wrong way, Dacia, for example. Yeah? There is a wide range, but at least you can be sure that a specific qualification will be done. And that's, I think, especially in this field, very important. Also here, we are very interested to share our knowledge. Therefore, our activities, I think, we have a lot of activities. We have also an active board, because we have a lot of change. We have a lot of change. Oh, sorry, I switched my slides here, but nothing here. Ah, yeah. Yeah, I have said enough. It's in respect to time. Also, this what's the interest, the advantage? Now, WTA is an organization which will serve in organizing conference, seminars, and expert meetings. I think that's in all associations. Also, publishing a recommendation and the public publications which are addressing these fields. Also, we are collaborating and editing with journals and so on, and we want to discuss all these things with all the people working in this field. And therefore, we have developed, I think, a small internal platform for fostering the research and development in the field of preservation and repair of existing buildings. We are fostering the communication of knowledge between research, education, and practice. So we are working also close together with other associations, institutions, and we promote the sharing of experience. And I think that's all issues which are addressed also here. Moreover, we try to come together with the young research people. So we have this week, in the end of this week in Delft, WTA International PhD Symposium, which will be organized by Rob van Hees, the leader of the WTA Netherlands-Flandern groups. And this PhD Symposium, which was also organized twice by Rostja Drohitka, Luc Schureman and Els van Verstringe in Belgium, and by me in Stuttgart. With this symposium, we try to bring together young people, young research people working in this field, and we are very happy because we are mainly dominated by Germans. But in these PhD symposiums, we have at maximum 5% participants from Germany. Most are far abroad from South America and so on, from eastern parts of Europe, Italy, France, and the people are very interested in the field and to share their knowledge, the work they are doing in this. Moreover, we try to address also young people, not only in the research field, also in the practitioner field, with an WTA award, which is given since 1999. Each year, a fascinating work in the research, in university, or in practice will addressed and will got a chance to get this award. Moreover, in Germany, we like to found associations. If I've given this on this, if there are 3 Germans and they think on a new topic, they will found an association. You can say it's crazy. But in the sense of this WTA, I think they have done a very good job 40 years ago, because it was 6 people which has seen the problems, which has seen all the disadvantages in this time, and through their connection, through opening and bringing together research and practice, they have found an association which is living and which will develop in the future. And therefore, now this year, the last 3 years, we have had a lot of discussions in WTA how we can optimize our structure to get more interest in Europe, not only in Germany, also in Europe. And therefore, we have worked out a new structure. It's oriented similar to ICOMOS, to open it to other countries, to make a structure which allows also countries in eastern part of Europe, in southern part, in northern part, in western part, in all over the world, to participate if they are interested in WTA. If you have any ideas or interest, I will be happy to discuss this with you in a smaller group. But in any way, very important is that we have also we have an international umbrella, but we need in any way the national activities, because in the national activities they know what is the problem in the nation, in the region, which specific type of materials will be used or are used, and which type of construction was realized in the past, and so they know the best where are the problems, and then the sharing of all these experience in the international sense can help in a very fast way to find out, to work out specific, maybe recommendations, but also it's enough if you have a state-of-the-art report or you have an education as expected. So I have time limit. So we have some new aspects for national groups, but that's specific to the association. Here we have also these statutes now since 4 weeks also in English language, so that we can open it for others and they can understand what we are thinking, because in the past we have had all in German, and I think only a small group of Russian people, for example, understand. The older one understand German, but the younger one, I think they want to read it in an English version. So in 2015, as it is addressed here, in 2017 we will have a General Assembly where we'll establish this new statute. Hopefully the members will agree. And then the way is open for the future for WTA International and in the national groups. And so in this sense, I think we have a new perspective, especially in respect to the activities which are international in an European context. Because, as you see here, we have in CENT TC 346, I'm also a member of this 10cc, conservation of cultural heritage, where the problems which will be dealt in WTA since 40 years will be addressed too, but in another way. Our recommendations are not only to describe like a DIN or a standard. We want to have a paper where also the practitioners have a listing how they have to deal in a specific problem. Not only which value they have to fulfill to have worked in the right way. also how to do this so that the result will be this one they need. And therefore, the idea is if we have more national groups in WTA and each nation is represented in different international or European standardization organization or processes, then the common interest of all of us to address the topics of existing buildings, of the preservation of cultural heritage building can be dealt better than if each nation is working itself. I'm a member in these groups, crazy discussions against, we all have the same idea, but we have not the time to share our ideas, to share the right way to handle all problems which are similar in all countries. So I will stop my presentation and say if you are interested in the work of WTA, we will be very happy to welcome you, not in a way that you have to be a member to discuss with us. Maybe that you're interested also in the work. Maybe that also Russia is interested in participation of this organization. You're welcome. Thank you.
Спасибо, профессор Гаррет. Ну, в общем,
Thank you kindly. The report was rather long and rather detailed. It had to do with organizational details and aspects and practical ones. We have already spoken about this conference being the flow which will develop the ways for interacting for the experts in this sphere to create maybe associations on the basis of other organizations here in Russia and abroad. I've worked in many technical committees, and I know that it is not a systemic approach to decide to solve this problem. Only after some interaction we shall be able to come to terms and to find understanding of who is doing what. And for me, these two reports appear to be very, very important. So thank you kindly for your detailed report. So now, dear colleagues, we are in for 2 more reports before a coffee break. Now I'm going to give the floor to Mr. Rostislav Drohitka, Professor, the Dean of the Faculty of Civil Engineering, Brno University of Technology, who is going to speak about the practical use of the WTA technical standards, technical regulations for the construction, maintenance and conservation of monuments in the Czech Republic.
Happy for his invitation in this conference, and I would like to present our experience about utilization of technical standards that are in Czech Republic. I would like to try present this presentation in Russian, and I must apologize for the big mistakes in this language. Если возможно, я буду.
If possible, I will try to speak Russian, so I bring apologies for my gross mistakes in Russian. I am the Dean of the Faculty of Civil Engineering of the Brno University of Technology. It is the second largest city in Czechia after Prague. I'm also the president, as my colleague has said, Mr. Garrett. I'm also the president of the Czech Republic National Group in WTA. So, as you see, the brief name for this organization is WTA. I tried to translate it into Russian, but I'm not sure whether it is good enough. The Czech branch of WTA was founded in 1998, and the basic field of our activities is cooperation with the subjects working in the same field, both in our country and abroad. We also do translating instructions into the Czech language because the Czechs don't very much like working with German and English languages. So we also organize different seminars and conferences. Annually, we hold joint conferences, both in Prague and in Brno. So soon we are going to hold the 39th conference in Prague. It will be held in the Czech language. And the 19th International Conference on Rehabilitation of Buildings and Constructions. It will be held in English. As Mr. Garcht, the president of WTA International, has said, we also have interactive working groups. So as you see, the groups marked in red, I can give examples of these groups. So we also publish our own journal about the latest news in WTA that have to do with technical problems. So it is in Czech, and the notes are given in English. Here you see an example of technical instruction or guidance, which has to do with lime mortar, and it was translated into the Czech language. Now I would like to give some examples of using these standards in practice. So first of all, for example, rehabilitation of wet constructions, and this work is covered by the working group under number 4. Of course, you are familiar with the Battle of Three Emperors, and not far from Austerlitz, the grave mound of peace was erected, and you can see it in the pictures. Here you see the crosscut of this monument. So it is being reconstructed now. The latest repair that had to do with the removal of wetness from the mortar. We also tried to do away with the dampness which accumulated from air. Here in the picture, you can see the soaking of water through the joints in the mortar. So currently we are looking for the reasons of it. Here you can see the interior of the monument and the consequences of the water soaking through the joints of the masonry. So we measured the moisture level, and to do away with it, we fixed here the panel heaters, as you can see in this picture, which are charged from the solar photovoltaic panels. So which means in another slide, you can see the visual picture of the heat current in the crosscut of this monument. So it is the first stage of this repair works. And secondly, we tried to control ventilation on this monument. So these were the major parts of the repair works being under reconstruction now. So another example of using the WTA guidelines has to do with the estimation of facade plaster and coloring. And it is supervised by the working group under number 2, who supervise finishing surfaces. So here you can see the facade of a castle after the repair works. So we have repaired the plaster layer and the primer layer, and you see that the tints of the facade finishing coloring are varied. In order to determine the reasons for these variations in coloring of plaster, which you can see in the pictures, we tested the samples and analyzed the structure and stratification of plaster, as well as differential analysis. So the samples of plaster had a high content of salts, to be more concrete, chlorides, nitrates, and sulfates. Under the guidelines of WTA can be seen in this slide in the table. Of importance is that nitrates and chlorides are very water absorbing, and this property was one of the reasons for the change in the plaster coloring. So here you can see the places of sampling on another wall, and the results of the chemical analysis. Well, I'm not sure whether you can see it properly or not. With the help of the analysis, we determined that the matrix of samples contained calcium carbonate. The finishing coloring demonstrated the insufficient quantity of the binding element, and we found the air hardening lime there. So it was another reason for variations in the coloring of the finishing plaster on the facade. Another reason was a high content of nitrates, which are extremely hygroscopic, and of course different degrees of dampness in plaster, which also influence the difference in coloring. So those were 2 examples of our activities. One more example is taken from Working Group 5. It has to do with estimating cement defects. This group has to do with rehabilitation of concrete constructions. So first of all, I would like to mention common defects for concrete and reinforced concrete constructions. These are defects and cracks on the surface of concrete, pockets, cavities, spalls, hollow spots, exposed reinforcement, insufficient resistance to frost and thaw, and difference in the cement color. So the following slides demonstrate very important defects mentioned. Here, for example, you see the poorly cemented filler. Everything is poorly done. So here you can see the placing of cement by way of free drop from the height of 9 meters. So as you see, they failed in their work as well. Here you can see pores, caverns, and discharge of cement paste on the surface of cement, so-called marmorization. Here you can see a cavern with the exposed reinforcement, and here is the result of poor cement placing. And you see the exposed reinforcement through concrete. There are very many cracks in the cement. Here you can see defects on the surface of the so-called textured cement, which is very much loved in Czechia. So you see, it is so-called grain structure. This picture demonstrates the frost-bound concrete, and here is the best example of non-professional rehabilitation of concrete during reconstruction work. They used technical standards of WTA. So as to the conclusions, I would like to summarize saying that we should diagnose all concrete and not only concrete existing and new civil constructions. We should pay attention to the craftily disguised defects and damages. The WTA technical standards can be used for all kinds of rehabilitation of the already existing and new buildings and civil constructions. The advantage of applying these standards is that they are universal for different kinds of defects and damages. So here I would like to demonstrate the guidelines of WTA, which were translated into the Czech language. And the last slide demonstrates the trends and innovations in the field of WTA standards. Unfortunately, we don't have close collaboration with German technical groups, Switzerland, and Netherlands. So I thank you for your kind attention, and I would like to bring my apologies again for the mistakes in the Russian language.
Но, знаете, вот как бы пример, вот доклад, как пример применения стандартов и оценка это, необходимости их применения вот, в реальной практике. На самом деле, вот, собственно, экспертная оценка и как бы некая унификация, общие подходы, как некие понимание общего языка, понимание проблем, наверное, очень важна. Мы, в общем-то, по этому, наверное, пути тоже так же идем. И надеюсь, все-таки еще раз повторюсь, вот гармонизация наших подходов наших иностранных коллег.
Is one of the tasks of our committee, and I think we shall work out the common platform and develop the common principles. One of the most important problems is the constructivism, the architecture of the Soviet period dated by the 1920s, which is unique in its stylistic qualities, but the quality of these constructions is in a rather poor state, and that is why renovating and rehabilitating concrete is a very important problem. In fact, thanks a lot. So, with your permission, I would like to give the floor to another reporter. It is going to be Mr. Klaus Burg, a member of the board of directors of the Remers Academy who is going to speak about the poles of standardization and individuality. You're welcome.
Russian. I think I didn't see very much mistakes in your speech. So I'm very proud to be here. In my opinion, it's very important to have conferences like this. And in my opinion, it's very important to say culture unifies people. And nowadays, where politicians don't talk to each other very much in Europe, it's very important that we talk to each other and that we create networks. So I'm the CEO of Ramas International, but today I speak with respect to the Ramas Academy, which is part of our group. But the Ramas Academy is a non-profit organization, and I try to explain today what we are doing. And in my opinion, heritage and the renovation of historical buildings is a very tricky topic. And we heard a lot about standard setting of WTA, and I believe that this organization is very useful, and I recommend very much to you that you found a WTA organization in Russia. But we cannot only talk about standard setting, we also have to talk about individuality when we talk about heritage and renovation of historical buildings. And I try to finish this morning with the question, do we have a problem with standards and individuality, or can we combine both, and how can we combine both? So in my opinion, heritage is a field where we have a lot of conflict of interests, and we have to find a way how to struggle around with these conflicts. In many cases, we don't have money to invest, and also we have a big problem how to use the renovated buildings afterwards. Because we strongly believe that in the long run, a building can only be renovated when we have found a good usage for the building. If not, after a couple of years, it will be destroyed again. So the Ramas Academy was founded in 1906, so 21 years ago. And in my opinion, that was done by Mr. Ramas, who was also the founder of the Ramas Group, because he loved the heritage business very much. And to be honest, we cannot earn a lot of money as a company in this field, but we believe that we have to support this part of our culture. And this Ramas Academy was founded 21 years ago, and now we do seminars all over Europe. And last year we had 18,000 participants in our seminars. And I told you already, the Academy is a non-profit organization, and we have a scientific advisory board with professors, but also organizations of craftsmen, and we try to discuss and find solutions how to solve conflicts with standard settings and individuality. So with our organization, we are also very much involved in Russia. So we have 60 employees in Russia, but we do also seminars in Russia. And the target groups of our seminars are craftsmen, architects, planners, but also employees of building authorities, from the government, but also from the big churches. So we deal with all the people who are involved in heritage business, and we try to offer seminars, not how to apply products, but how to renovate buildings to a most scientific standard. And we also have the objective to transfer knowledge from Germany to other countries, but also from other countries to Germany back. So this academy is a vehicle for us to create a very international network and to improve from discussing with each other. So one topic in heritage is to increase the attention of other people and also to increase the awareness a big problem. I think we listened this morning to all the other speeches. A big problem is that a lot of people in Russia, but also in other countries, don't understand the importance of heritage. And they believe that it's easier to build new buildings, but it's very important to tell them that we lose our culture, because buildings tell the history of our countries. And therefore, it's very, very important to renovate them and also to restore them for future generations. And we created a special award, which is given to people every 2 years on the Denkmal in Leipzig, which is a leading exhibition for heritage business. And Leipzig is also a partner exhibition of the Denkmal in Moscow, which was founded 2 years ago. And we as Ramas, we are a big partner of the Moscow exhibition. And in Germany, we try to increase attention and awareness by giving this award to craftsmen, but also to investors for special, very innovative problem solvings with respect to heritage. And we invite up to 1,000 participants every second year. So we invite people from 20 nations in Europe, and that is our part in order to make this exhibition more well-known and also more interesting to all groups of participants. So with respect of monument preservation, we have a lot of conflicts of interests. We have scientists, we have monument conservators, we have craftsmen, and some of these different group of people have different interests. The scientists, of course, they want to use the most modern technology maybe, and they say every object needs an individual solution. The craftsmen, of course, they want to apply products which work, and they want to have products which last for a long time, and they want to avoid to guarantee for future damages. And then we have monument conservators who sometimes are very, in my opinion, very theoretical, and they want to restore the building in a way like it was built up at the beginning. So they want to use the same material, they want to restore it in the same way that it was built maybe 300, 500 or 1,000 years ago. And that is sometimes a big conflict and sometimes, in our opinion, not the best solution. And therefore, it's very important to find a compromise between these different groups of people, and we have to discuss questions like how much standards do we want to apply, how much individuality do we want to apply, and it's very important, and that's a very important discussion in Russia, do we want to preserve buildings or do we want to restore buildings? That's, in my opinion, very, very important. And in some cases where Russian people like to restore buildings, we, with our experience in Germany, don't recommend that, because a proper restorement is sometimes not possible. So the basis of everything we are doing is done in 1964. There are scientists and people involved in heritage building create a Charter of Venice. And this Charter of Venice is still the basis, in my opinion, for the WTA, for the WTA, and for all other people, because it gives a guideline how to renovate historical buildings. And I just show you very roughly 2 articles out of this Charter of Venice. One is article number 9, which states when do we have to restore buildings, and article number 10, how do we restore buildings? And article number 9 says that the restoration of buildings is a highly specialized operation. So that means every building is unique, and for every building you have to find a unique solution. And number 10 says and that is very important also for Russia as a message from us, from Germany. The Charter of Venice allows to apply modern products. So it's not a conflict of interest to apply modern products in order to restore old buildings. So as a consequence, we have to decide between functionality, reversibility, and authenticity when we do a proper renovation of buildings. So I tried, because I'm not a technician, I'm a commercial guy, but I'm very much involved in the heritage business, and to be honest, my heart is very close to this business, and I try to persuade people to put energy in this business, because I believe that we have to protect historical buildings for future generations. And I tried to show in a small paragraph what it means to use modern material to renovate buildings. And that is very important for my experience for Russia, because in Russia we have a big community who likes to apply historical material. And for many reasons you can apply historical material, but sometimes it's not the best way. So the result you reach at the beginning is the same, whether you apply historical building material or modern material. But when you look after 5 or 10 years, the result is different. So we believe that modern materials sometimes are useful to apply, because you don't have the chance to renovate a building every 5 years. So it's very hard to get the money for the first renovation, and then we should protect the building in a way that it lasts at least for 30, 20, or how long years. So modern material sometimes makes sure that the renovation will last for longer than if you apply original material. Then we have the conflict between renovation and conservation, and I show you 2 examples. One example is the Kaiser Wilhelm Gedächtnis Church in Berlin, which was destroyed after the Second World War, in the Second World War, and the German people decided to keep this monument as a sign for the destroyment of the Second World War. And we didn't restore this building, but we conservated this building. And you see there's no roof on the church, so we have a lot of rain, we have a lot of different pollutions and everything. And we found a way to conservate this building and to make sure that it will last for the next 100, 200, or 500 years. Another example on the right-hand side is a church in Gorovitz, which is a small city about 450 kilometers to the east of Moscow. We just went there with a group of people involved in heritage building. And this city was the most eastern city in the original historical Russia. And this city has a lot of historical monuments. So about 50 buildings in the city are 300 or 400 years old. And we have the problem in this area that people leave this area. So people move to Moscow and other big cities. And our objective is to find a way how to make life more attractive in this area. So we created a group of German scientists and people. Of course, we want to renovate the buildings, but we want to bring life into the city again. And this picture is a church where we believe that you cannot restore it. So this church is about 50 meters high. There's a lot of painting inside. The painting is still very nice. So you can when you look at the building, you see how beautiful it must have been 300 years ago. And we believe when you start to renovate these paintings, you will destroy the origin of this building. So it's very important to think about it and maybe to conserve this building instead of renovate it, because we don't have the techniques nowadays to restore it in a way like it was done in the 16th century. Another example is the castle of Balga, which is in the Kaliningrad area. And this area belonged to Germany for 700 years. So this area is a very good example for the common culture of Germany and Russia. And this castle was already founded more than 1,000 years ago by the Pratzen, which were the origin people who lived there. And in 1239, this area was conquered by Germany, and it was called Ostpreußen, so East Preußen. And this area was one of the main areas where the modern Germany was founded. So a lot of regulations, a lot of history came from this area. And this castle was the castle where the Germans conquered the area and also developed the area. So farmers came in, the churches came in, religion came in. So a lot of influences came from this castle. And the big story of this castle is also March 45, so the very last days of the Second World War. And more than 50,000 soldiers, Russians and Germans, died in this area in 1 week. And a lot of them are still missing. So we don't have the soldiers, we don't have the bodies. And this area was used after the Second World War for the Russian army as a training center for bombing. And we got the objective to find a solution how to renovate this castle. And that is very important to understand. In our opinion, we have 3 big steps when we think about renovation. It's not just to renovate it, but we first have to do an analysis. So we have to think, what was the origin, history of this monument? The second is the diagnostics. So what is the problem with this building? And this building, for example, suffers very much from statical problems. And not only raining and water, but a lot of statical problems because of this bombing after the Second World War. And we have to talk about therapy. So our objective is that we have to keep in mind all these 3 big steps. And we have to renovate or we have to conserve a building according to the history. And there were opinions, for example, to do an amusement center in this area to attract it for people. And we are still in the process to discuss with the cultural minister how to renovate this castle. But we believe that we need to have a way to make this castle, to give this castle to the people and to tell the common history between Germany and Russia and also the common history at the end of the Second World War. Because you see this cross, a lot of people come there, Germans and Russians. They don't know where their fathers or brothers are, and they put crosses there because they try to remember their relatives. And that's very important to keep in mind that every building has a history, and we have to find a way how to keep this history for future generations. So we, as the Bernhard Ramos Academy, we try to be very practical. I believe WTA is also very practical. You do a lot of standard setting, but it's sometimes not very easy to read all your documents because it's very technical stuff. But we try to be very practical, and we offer seminars, and these seminars are not product trainings. So these seminars deal with all different topics, how to renovate buildings, and how to renovate them in a way to keep them for 50, 100 years, or so on. So we have a lot of examples in Europe where we, as Ramos organization, renovated buildings, or where buildings were renovated with our material. And we have, for example, the Opera in Frankfurt, which was destroyed after the Second World War. And we did waterproofing in the early 70s, and it still works without any problem. So we try to teach people involved in renovation of buildings how to do a proper renovation. And these people are craftsmen, experts from the building associations, experts from the churches, and all people, architects and planners who are involved in the renovation of buildings. Our seminars are accredited by the German Architect and Engineering Chamber. So in Germany, architects have to participate in trainings every 2nd year. So they have to collect credits in order to get their certificates to work as an architect. And our seminars are accredited. That means they fulfill a very high standard and they are up to the scientific way how to renovate buildings. And we as RAMAS, we concentrate not only on stone and mortar, but we also concentrate on wood very much. So we offer seminars for both areas, historical, natural stones, mortars, but also wood. And it's a pleasure for me to tell you that next year we are offering 9 seminars in 3 cities of Russia, and we all invite you to participate in these seminars. It's a non-profit organization. This organization is supported by the RAMAS Group, finance-wise, and therefore these seminars are very cheap, but fulfill a very high standard. So the strategy of us is to put a 4-pillar model into the market. So one part is to create proper products. But apart from these products, we have the academy to train people. We have an institute for analytics where we do a lot of analysis. So you can send samples to us and we analyze the samples, for example, salt-wise or other things. And then we do a proper consulting how to renovate these buildings. And our Institute for Analytics is the most modern institute in Europe for the heritage business in total. And additionally, we have 30 experts in Germany, apart from our organization in Russia and other countries. And these 30 experts go to objects like the Balga Castle, or also to Edinburgh, Ekaterinburg, or last week we went to Odessa in Ukraine, and we help our local organizations to find the right way how to renovate buildings and how to find a good solution, an individual solution between the different conflicts of interest I marked out before. And next year, I told you already, we are creating an international seminar. It's not only one seminar, but it's 3 seminars. Each seminar will take for 2 days, so it's very, very intensive. And the topics are waterproofing of buildings, facade protection, and mold protection. And we do the seminars in 8 countries and in 9 European cities, like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kazan, Warsaw, Kiev, Prague, Berlin, Amsterdam, London, and Antwerp. And we try to create a network of people. So mainly we have German referent people who are expert in these fields, but we also invite foreign people from other countries. And our idea is to create an international network and an international community, because that is very important for Russia, but also very important in Europe. We are the minority of people who are involved in heritage building, and we have to work together. Otherwise, we don't get the power to convince the other people who want to destroy old people and build new ones. And therefore, as a conclusion, in my opinion, there's no polarity between standards and individuality. Each reference or each object is unique, and we always have to find the right solution for each unique problem. And we have many environmental issues which have to be considered, like financing, the usage of the building, do we want to restore or conserve, and so on and so on. So we strongly believe that each object has to be individuality, but we need to have standards in order not to discuss everything with each object. So the standards of WTA or others help us not to have an academic discussion how to do waterproofing, how to do facade treatments, and so on and so on, because that discussion has already been done over the last 40 years. So we can base our comments and our consulting on the experience which were gained over the last 40 years, but still we have to find an individual solution for each building. And therefore, in my opinion, we have to be very practical. We don't have to be theoretical. We shouldn't have academical discussions, and we should put our energy in order to find the right solution for each object. Standards are helping us to reduce the problems at the beginning, but we need to have unique solutions. And therefore, I thank you for listening to me. In my opinion, it's very important to have conferences like this and to create a European community and to help each other, because there are many experiences all over the world and we don't have to invent our solutions always the same. So let's talk to each other and let's create a good community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And concurrent with your ideas, with our technical council, when we say that standardization don't kill the individualization. The standardization doesn't kill the individualization. It just raises the approaches at a high level. So the theoretical discussions at the moment of preparation of standards is very important. That is, but further, when the standards are available, when the standards are in place, when we have the common experience of standards, the standards help us to move forward faster. And so our experience, together with the experience of the international and European organizations, is very important. And I hope that the expansion of this sphere of cooperation will help to work out the common language, the common language of professionals based on the common understanding of the concepts of the cultural heritage. Any heritage, Austrian or German or anyone else, we are part of the globe, and this is our common heritage. It is a common unity, and the culture can unite us. So thank you very much for this resonance of our understandings. And we have some time, about 10-12 minutes, when we can organize the question and answer session. Well, if there are any questions, you can put them to the speakers.
Or maybe so far you are thinking over and trying to understand what you have listened to. Well, then I would like to take the advantage of my position, and I would like to ask my colleague, Mr. Mers, in what way is it possible to arrange a discussion when solving the issues of fire safety, etc. In what way do you carry discussions between the representatives of different institutions, and how grave the contradictions are between these organizations? I hope that they are temporary. Personally, we do have such contradictions, especially when it has to do with fire safety here in Russia. So in what forms do you hold such discussions, and how positive are the results of such discussions?
The complicated one, because the discussions can be very difficult as the two worlds are meeting, the world of the heritage thing and the world of a fire regulation. In general, you can say that many of the norms which are in the regulations, they already give the solution to a problem. And those solutions cannot be applied for a monument. For instance, the dimensions of certain escape routes, the size of certain spaces. So those things you cannot one-to-one apply for a monument. So the discussion should not be whether or not to apply those rules, but those solutions, but is to go back to the problem what those solutions are meant for. And the problem is that people can get safe out of a building. Or fire regulations are not there to preserve the buildings, but are to rescue people which are in the buildings. So the discussion should be with the technicians, the heritage people, and the fire department as to what is the problem and how can we find alternative solutions, given the fact that we cannot change the monument and the dimension of the monument and the roots. So how can we get people safe out of a building? What is the use? And what other things can be put in place to compensate for the fact that you cannot, implement the solutions of the norms? So by, for instance, having a larger room, it can be that you create more fire exits. It can be that you, there are all these regulations about the norms, how long doors should be able to stand the fire. That you apply other types of doors which compensate for the fact that the rooms are larger. It can be that with the signing of, or with the use, you create something new. And then you can always say, and it's the same with a heritage permit, it depends very much on the guy who's dealing with you. It can be somebody who's very strict and wants to apply the law, and it says no, no, no. And then it can be complicated. But what you need is people who are creative and start to understand the problem and then help to find a solution. It is important that there is a consensus, because in the case that there will be a fire and people will die, those people will be put in the press and will be held responsible for it. So there should be really a solution, but in practice you can say that there is always a solution if you do not apply strictly the solution of the regulation, but go back to the problem of safety and how you can deal with that. I hope that answers your question.
Ну, мне кажется, здесь тоже очень важно.
Well, I think preventive measures are also very important here. And it has to do with the functionality of the historical monument. We have to make calculations. We have to appraise in what way this monument of architecture and culture can be used.
Testing institute, and we have a fire department in my office. And we do burning tests, fire tests, and all types of structures and materials. And the problem is that the most experience is in new structures. We have no experience, seldom any tests on historic structures. So the decision, there's a responsibility of the authority how to ensure that no people will die due to fire. So they say the maximum, which they know from the new buildings. And the same rules will be adapted on the old structures. As you have said, we should think new. And especially the new technical committee, which is working in the field of fire, they will work in this, that they will work out strategies, because we have some engineers in Germany, and I think all over in the world, which say, I'm sure that it will work, even in an old structure. But the people sitting on the other side, they say, you have to be sure, I have to sign this. And they will not sign if they have no facts on the table. And so I think we should enhance research, tests on such structures, how the structures behave under fire. There's a lack of knowledge. It's very difficult with cracks of timber structures. I have a museum as an engineer, and the inspector said of the authorities, there's a crack, you have to fill this crack with gypsum. It was crazy. It was a timber structure of 1.5 meters. It's with nothing to do with authenticity. I have had discussions more than 2 years that he will accept. Then we have done a test, and then he accepted. It costs a lot of time, and we have to find a similar material to do this test. Yeah. But I think that's a very important thing, how to deal with this, because a lot of buildings have a lot of problems with fire safety. And then we have drastic changes in these buildings.
Спасибо.
Thank you kindly. I think the fire resistance of materials is very important, just like the fire safety. But I would like to mention the functionality issue and the layout issues. We should think about the number of people who can be placed in this or that site, historical site. You know, one thing when you have 6 persons available on the site, and the other thing is when you have 50 persons on the site. As you see, any historical building should stick to some regulations of maximum crowding. Our firefighting academy is currently cooperating with the emergency ministry, and we do hope that they will work out the guidelines and standards of fire safety. One of the first standards will have to do with the fire safety of the buildings which are the objects of cultural heritage. Later on, we shall work further with these standards. Thank you kindly. Colleagues, any more questions? So name yourself, please. I represent St. Pete, the Council of Experts of Northwest. I have a philosophical question, and I do hope that you will comment on it. Listening to your speech, which was very interesting, well, first we listened to our Russian colleagues, and then we witnessed the modern traditions from Holland, and then passed over to more traditional German approaches. Paul paid a lot of attention to the buildings that have to be accommodated to the modern use. And for me, it was a bit surprising to hear that you paid so much attention to the fire safety standards, while in Russia, first and foremost, we pay attention to the properties of the monument per se, and only then we should care about the standards of fire safety. I don't mean that it is of no importance, but still, Klaus spoke about the Venice Charter and mentioned classical concepts. I would like to mention the resolution of UNESCO, the criteria determining the value of the historical monument. I mean the value of the materials, the craft of the architect, etc. So these concepts are rather complicated, and it is still more difficult to conserve them, to preserve our heritage. So how fast and how difficult it is when you have to coordinate the list of works, when you are looking for the balance between the regulations, the basic principles that have to be observed, and the facts that the historical site has to keep on living and develop under the modern conditions. So, if possible, do please comment on it. Well, I think maybe each of the speakers could say a couple of words on this topic, because the topic is so wide that we could devote a whole conference to it.
Question. And it's interesting to relate norms also to philosophy and the larger thinking. If you got out of my lecture that I put the fire regulations before the heritage value, then I think I've made a mistake in my talk. I tried to stress that the value assessment is the terms of reference of a restoration. So the value assessment, in a way, in my thinking, replaces the solutions of the Charter of Venice. And once I wrote an article saying a charter for each renovation, because after Venice came dozens of other charters, Washington and NAIRA, and on all different things. So if you are in an argument, you can always find a charter which helps you to do it. But I think the challenge is, as every monument is unique, is that we make the charter for each renovation. So the value assessment is in a way the charter where you make your decisions. And then for the material aspects, all the regulations and the knowledge and the database are of help to do that. But at the same time, you're dealing with the immaterial quality and the value, like in the symmetry or this place where the war was, and the castle stands for something where it was never made for. It's to mourn a war which was fought many years after its construction. And you have the contemporary use. And for all these interventions, I think the charter you have written in your value assessment, in what you say, these are the essential, the core values of this monument. These are the terms of reference when you're dealing with the technical things, when you're dealing with the functional things, and when you're dealing with the new use of it. So I think the challenging thing is to find out what is the right mix of charters for each and every challenge you have. And therefore the heritage assessment, the statement, like you also mentioned the World Heritage, the criteria and how you define them, they are the terms of reference for all the arguments which you have about whether or not certain things can be done to a monument or a historic city or not.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, in my opinion, it's very important, as you addressed, it was the Venice Charter pointed out, Article 10. There's really written that in Article 10 you can use modern technologies and modern materials, but only in the fact, or only then, if you ensure that no traditional work can help this building. That means, before we can use the modern materials, we have to ensure that the authentic situation isn't able to keep with the traditional techniques. That means that we have an understanding, the need of an understanding how traditional materials work, how we can do this work, which craftsmen, which practitioners are needed to do this in a traditional way. And if it not work, it makes sense to say, okay, for this small part, not all the facade mostly, only for parts of this, these modern techniques will be used. Therefore, I think that you have meant in the same sense, it's very important to estimate, to work out the value of the structure, of the facade of the building, to work out the very important things and how to deal with the different points, because we have a huge building, a huge number of different situations, and we have to solve for all these individual situations a solution, and it's not payable or other reasons, and all people like also addressed to ICOMOS and so on, and architects and the cultural cultural heritage authorities, if they accept it should be done in a modern way, then it's okay. But it's a process. It's a very difficult process, I think.
Спасибо.
Thank you kindly. If possible, I would like to speak Russian. Construction materials, which can be used in this case. For example, in the Czech Republic, in Brno, we have established a new institution belonging to the Department of Civil Engineering. We study nanomaterials there, nano, micro, and macro materials. And I think, how shall I put it? I think we shouldn't view these materials separately, so we should use a combined approach. When using these materials, Well, with your permission, I would like to finalize our morning session. We are going to have a break of 15 minutes, and then we shall resume our deliberations. At the very end of our conference, we shall also have a chance to ask and answer the questions. And now we're going to have a break. Thank you.